Oh, that looks terrible. Okay, there's my audience. It's my mother and my brother. They're going to be sitting through the speech today. So, everybody loves convenience, right? It's everything about life. It's easier to get around, easier to do things, easier to buy things, everything. So, computers have become an integral part of convenience today. They're used in everything, from life-saving machines all the way down to simple toys for kids. One of the main things I want to cover is why they're so important. So, for instance, when you walk into a hospital, what do they use to take care of you? They use machines, right? They use heart monitors and blood pressure cuffs and things like that. Well, a lot of those machines require computer chips and computer parts, and they function just like computers. Even nurses use tablets sometimes to communicate. It's rare, but in certain hospitals they do use them. So, not only that, the military also uses these things for everything. They use it to scout out areas, they use it for EV bots to help maybe take the place of a human who would normally have to go in and disarm a bomb or something along those lines. It's just the number of uses are endless for these things. They're used in defibrillation paddles, they're used to monitor the charge on them to make sure they're actually charged, to charge them even. So there's that out of the way. And then they're expensive, obviously. That's why we pay taxes to maintain the area we live and pay companies, and we pay stupidly high prices on these things. And there's tax on the items themselves we buy. The reason these are so expensive is because it takes time, it takes materials, and it takes effort to make these. One of the main things in electronics, especially, is the material used. If you use cheap materials, they will break and they will not do their job. And when you're in a situation where they need to do their job, you really don't want to break it. And the materials themselves have to be dug out of the ground. So the copper, the steel, anything like that that's used in them needs to be dug up, processed, and brought to wherever it's going to be turned into these parts. That itself costs a ton of money. Also, you can help reduce some of these costs. It doesn't always work, but if you take certain parts, they are recyclable. You can put them in your local recycle bin. Recycling plant will take them, break them down, get shipped right back to the manufacturing plant. Even some parts, if you like doing things yourself, like I do sometimes, you can take parts out of one computer, build something else out of them. It doesn't have to be a computer. But even things like that, you can build other machines out of them without paying a dime. Lastly, I'm going to cover why it's become an integral part of our society. So, this generation, especially kids today, always have phones in their hands. It's glued to them. They use it for tons of things. This can be a good thing and a bad thing. It promotes laziness, unhealthiness sometimes. On the other hand, it's used to keep track of your kids. You can use apps and things like that now to keep track, to find out where your kids are where they are, what they're doing. Even in certain situations where they may be in danger, they can't answer their phone or whatever the case is, you can have the police track it off of a GPS that's built into every phone. On the downsides, I mean, kids tend to get a lot lazier because they don't have to get up to go anywhere. They have entertainment. They don't need to go outside anymore. It's got things like built-in calculator, Google, all of that, so they can just look things up versus actually studying, which is a bad thing, but as long as they're used responsibly, they're great. Other than that, I would say they're an integral tool to the police to communicate, to track down suspects and things like that, and just a great way to communicate in general. However, they are also computers. They're touch screen. You can use the calculators, the apps, things like that. But to make these, they cost a ton of money, and therefore to make anything off it, the merchants charge $800, $900 for a phone. Seems a tad ridiculous. But when you think about what actually goes into it, it does not seem that bad. However, I don't suggest going out and buying your kid a $1,000 smartphone and letting him run around with it. But then again, that's just me. Now, covering what we talked about. We talked about how they're useful and how they save lives. We talked about how you can maybe help save some money for the companies that are producing them, so we won't be as much sometimes. And then we talked about how they become an integral part of our society. Now, one thing I felt like I didn't touch enough on was how they save lives. So, say you have a grandparent or something along those lines in the hospital, and he goes into shock, well, or has a heart attack, something along those lines. In any of those situations, or even when you have a wife that's pregnant, they can use ultrasound, which is displayed through a computer monitor to show you what's going on the inside. That's not necessarily life-saving, but it's certainly a giant help to the doctors. And life-saving, when the doctors performing operations or things like that, they may need to use micro cameras and things like that to explore the inside of your body, look for cancer cells or anything like that. So the list goes on for that. But I think that's a good spot to end. In conclusion, again, talked about how they save lives, how they're useful on that front when it comes to military and domestic applications. Talked about how you can cut the price down, and covered how our society, it's become almost a necessity for our kids to have these days.